Prisoners are humans and members of a state. A functioning state works when people follow its laws and human rights. It is our belief that it is the state's role responsibility to reform prisoners. We believe that the prison system has many flaws, stopping true reform. A study by the US Department of Justice found that the utilitarian ethic is not served by the prison system, whose effects benefit neither inmates nor society. If we apply utilitarianism to this problem, we find that reform is the best possible outcome, as prisoners are reintegrated into society as functioning citizens, leading to the greater good of society and benefit more people. The guards that keep the prisoners in order are often corrupt themselves. In the 14 months leading up to the January 2022, 65 prison staff were convicted for corruption in the UK. According to the National Centre for Biotechnology Information in the US, prisoners suffer higher rates of communicable diseases such as HIV than the general population, and that healthcare within some prison systems is less than satisfactory. The United Nations state that a sentence of imprisonment constitutes only a deprivation of the basic right to liberty and not the restriction of other human rights. Prison reform is necessary to ensure that this principle is respected and that human rights of prisoners are protected. The UN also state that the obligation to protect requires states to protect individuals against human rights abuses. The obligation to fulfill means that states must take action to allow the enjoyment of basic human rights, and thus, countries have the obligation to prioritize prisoner reform.
The purpose of the justice system can be mainly divided into three areas: retribution, protection, and reform. Neuroscientists such as John Dylan Haynes argue that our behavior is determined by neurochemicals, and so we can't be truly held responsible for our actions. Therefore, the effects of external variables on human psychology shows that retribution isn't a valid aim of punishment, and reform should be the priority instead. The legal system also aims to protect citizens from criminals. Incarceration isn't the final solution, as prisoners are inevitably released. According to the American National Institute of Justice, in 2005, 77% of released prisoners were arrested within the next 5 years. Therefore, the reformation of prisoners serves as the main form of protection. The state is also responsible for crimes happening. According to the Edinburgh study of youth transitions and crime, people who suffer from drug use as a child are more likely to become criminals. As the state is responsible for welfare system failures, there is moral responsibility for it to reform prisoners.
Statistics suggest that the traditional prisons in our correction systems do not often actually reform prisoners and stop them from reoffending. The UKRI stated that in the UK, 75% of ex-inmates reoffend within the first 9 years of release and 39.3% within the first 12 months. In Norway, Bastøy prison is breaking the boundaries of traditional prison reformation methods. Each man has his own room and shares the kitchen and other facilities with the other inmates. The inmates also earn roughly $8 a day on a variety of jobs that include growing food, looking after horses, repairing bicycles, doing woodwork, and maintaining Bastøy Island's facilities. Every inmate is offered high-quality education and training programs to increase their skills. It hosts 115 inmates with staff of 69 prison employees. Only 5 employees remain on the island overnight. In their free time, inmates can visit the church, school, or library and engage in leisure activities. All the guards have received 3 years of training compared to 6 months in the US and resemble social workers more than prison officers. Bastøy prison houses murderers and rapists, yet it has the lowest reoffending rate in Europe, 16%, compared with the European average of about 70%, and it's one of the cheapest prisons to run in Norway.
Following on from this, how does religion reinforce our argument that it is the responsibility of the state to reform prisoners? The modern prison originated from an experimental project carried out by a group of Protestant Christians called Quakers. Imprisonment, an idea with Christian roots, often forgets to take into account that prisoners do not reform themselves. So if prisoners won't do this by themselves, the responsibility must fall to the state that placed prisoners in prison in the first place. Thus, the moral and upright thing would be for the incarcerated to take complete ownership of the offender's punishment. As the Book of Romans rightly points out, if the offender, having accepted wrongdoing, is not reintegrated and restored into society with the necessary love and aid from the state, then all have fallen short of the glory of God. For the state to be withdrawn from prisoner rehabilitation would be to fall short not only to God, but to society as a whole.